June Kong didn't knock. He never did. He strode into Moon's office like he owned it, tall, smug, and glowing with arrogance. His suit was a crisp designer black, his hair styled to perfection, and his cologne left a trail of citrus and dominance. Moon didn't flinch. He remained seated behind his desk, fingers loosely interlocked, his expression unreadable. "Hyung," June said with mock warmth. "You look well. I see your little rebellion is thriving." Moon raised a brow. "Did you come to check on me or insult me?" June smirked. "A little of both." Miracle stood by the window, watching quietly, her arms folded. She knew who this was. The golden child. The one who was supposed to inherit it all. But something about him felt too perfect, like a forged signature. June turned to her, his smile turning predatory. "You must be Miracle." She didn't return the smile. "And you must be the shadow everyone keeps praising." Moon's lips twitched. Miracle, as usual, didn't flinch. June chuckled. "Feisty. I like that. I can see why my brother is infatuated." His eyes narrowed. "But I wonder how long that'll last." "That depends," Miracle replied, "on how long you plan to keep pretending you're the rightful heir." Moon stood slowly from his chair. Though he was still in his wheelchair, the authority in his presence was magnetic. "What do you want, June?" June's gaze lingered on Miracle for a beat too long before returning to Moon. "Father's nervous. Word is out that you're getting involved again. He doesn't like that. And Sua? Humiliated. She's already stirring the press." "She embarrassed herself," Moon said flatly. "I don't care," June said, circling the room like a vulture. "But the board does. They don't want drama. They want stability. They want me." Moon leaned forward. "They don't even know you." "Maybe. But they trust me more than a crippled ghost." Miracle moved forward. "Then maybe they need to see who the real ghost is." June turned to her again, his smile syrupy and dangerous. "You're smart. Sharp tongue. But I wonder, are you loyal or just playing a longer game?" She stepped close, meeting him eye to eye. "Unlike you, I don't play games. I fight them." Later that week, the rooftop was quiet again. The sun had barely risen, and Miracle stood with her hands clasped in front of her, watching the city blink to life. Moon arrived moments later, wheeling up beside her with 2 cups of hot cocoa. "No coffee today?" she asked. "You needed comfort more than caffeine." She smiled and took the cup. "Thanks." Moon looked tired, not physically but inside, like something heavy was sitting on his chest. "I can feel it," he said quietly. "They're closing in. They won't win." "They might." June has every weapon on his side. Money, charm, the family's approval. "You have something stronger." "What?" She turned to him. "Me." He looked at her, then really looked. "You know, I spent years building walls, pretending this chair was my shield. Then you walked in like light through a crack." Miracle swallowed. "Don't shut the light out now." He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "Promise me something." "Anything. If they come for me, you don't back down. Don't leave, no matter what they say." "I promise." 2 days later, she received a card. Elegant. Hand-delivered. "Miss Miracle, I'd be honored if you'd join me for dinner. I have a proposition you won't want to ignore. June Kong." Miracle nearly threw it away. But something in her gut said face him. She wore a simple dark green dress and tied her hair into a soft knot. She looked like elegance, and resolve walked into the room. June Kong had reserved the entire rooftop restaurant. The city lights danced below them like stars spilling from the ground. "You look divine," June said as she sat. "No wonder Hyung is obsessed." "I'm not here to flirt," Miracle said. "Get to the point." June chuckled and poured her wine. "I like direct women." "Fine. Let's talk." He leaned forward. "My brother's condition will never improve. You're tying yourself to a broken future. I can offer you something different." "Let me guess, money? A job? Power? Everything you've never had," he said. "You're smart, beautiful, underappreciated. I could give you a life where you don't have to fight every day to be seen." She looked him dead in the eye. And all I have to do is betray him? Betrayal is such a dramatic word, he said smoothly. Let's call it reallocation of loyalty. Miracle stood. You know what I see when I look at you, June? He raised a brow. A boy playing king in his brother's stolen crown. Before he could respond, she walked away, her heels clicking like defiance across the marble floor. The next morning, photos flooded the company's group chats. Miracle spotted dining alone with June calm? Gold digger or power player? Moon stormed into the floor. Who's spreading this? He demanded. Silence. Miracle walked in behind him, chin high. It's true, she said. I met with June. Gasps. But not for what you think. She turned to face everyone. He offered me everything. Power, money, luxury. If I gave him Moon. Eyes widened. And I said no. Her voice rang through the office like thunder. Because I don't need wealth to know my worth. And I don't need your approval to know who I love. The room fell completely silent. Moon looked at her with something between awe and heartbreak. That night, they sat in the back of his car. Quiet. Why didn't you tell me? He asked finally. I knew you'd try to protect me. But I didn't want protection. I wanted a choice. Moon turned to her, pulling her gently into his lap despite the awkward space. You're not a choice. You're the only one. They kissed, slow and lingering, the kind of kiss that felt like healing. Her hand slipped beneath his collar, fingertips brushing his skin. You're warm, she whispered. I'm alive, he replied, holding her tight. And I'll fight for us now. No more hiding. No more silence. The morning after the storm, Miracle woke up in Moon's arms. His breathing was slow, steady, and peaceful, a rhythm she could memorize for life. They had fallen asleep on the couch in his study, clothes wrinkled, hair tousled, bodies tangled like the truth they hadn't yet spoken. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the early rays pouring through the wide window. His hand was still wrapped around hers, possessive even in sleep. For a fleeting moment, everything felt safe. But peace has a way of whispering right before the scream. Later that day, the board meeting was leaked. The conference room was filled with tensions so thick, it strangled the air. Every executive member was present. June sat near the head, smug and poised. Moon wheeled in last, his expression unreadable, but his jaw was locked like a man preparing for war. One of the older board members cleared his throat. We've received internal complaints, Director Moon. Photos. Rumors. Let's skip the theatrics, June interrupted, tossing a folder onto the table. We all know why we're here. To discuss whether a man in a wheelchair should still sit on the board, let alone lead a company. There was a collective inhale. Moon glanced at the folder, then at the faces around the table. He didn't flinch. Since you want to skip the theatrics, let's skip the lies too, he said coldly. I'm not disabled. The silence was deafening. One of the executives choked on his coffee. What? June said, stiffening. Moon rose from his chair, stood, took a full step forward. Whispers burst across the room like a detonated secret. You're walking. Impossible. June looked like someone had slapped him across the soul. You've been lying? All this time? Moon straightened his jacket. I was in an accident, yes. I lost function temporarily. I could have recovered faster, but I chose to disappear. Why? Demanded the chairman. Moon's eyes scanned the room. Because after 3 failed relationships, a public divorce, and being treated like broken glass by my own family, I wanted to disappear long enough to see who truly saw me. June stood slowly, voice sharp. You deceived the entire company. No, Moon said calmly. I protected it. From you. Gasps rippled again. You're not the heir, Moon continued. You never were. I am. Father made the transition quietly to avoid scandal after my accident, but the legal documents were filed 2 years ago. I am the majority shareholder. I own 51% of K Group. The silence was absolute now. June looked around, waiting for someone to object. No one did. Moon's voice lowered. You've done well playing Prince. But I'm the king now. And the game is over. Meanwhile, Miracle sat in the break room, trying to breathe. She hadn't seen Moon since that morning. Word of the meeting had already trickled down to every floor. He's not really crippled. He stood up, walked out of the chair. It was all a test. A trick. A betrayal. She excused herself to the restroom and stared into the mirror. Her lip trembled. He had lied to her. Not about something small, but about everything. Moon found her on the rooftop again, the place where everything had begun. Miracle didn't turn as he walked toward her. Not wheeled. Walked. Fully. Moon stopped a few steps away, his voice soft. I wanted to tell you sooner. She turned then slowly. Her eyes were tired. Hurt. But you didn't. I was going to. After dinner last night. But the board meeting came too fast. You had weeks, Moon. He stepped closer. I needed to be sure. Sure of what? She snapped, the pain cracking her voice. That I loved you even if you couldn't walk? That I wasn't like the others? Yes. His voice was desperate. That's exactly it. Tears welled in her eyes. Do you think I'm stupid? That I didn't notice things? The way you avoided rehab talk. How you never let me see you at home without the chair. I chose you, Moon. Over the whispers, over your brother, over comfort. And you still didn't trust me. Moon's eyes softened. Miracle. She stepped back. You think this was just about you proving something to yourself. But it's not. You lied to me. You made me believe I was healing someone when the wound had already closed. He looked broken. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. Silence. Then, she turned and walked past him. Not because she hated him, but because she loved him too much to forgive easily. That evening, Moon sat alone in the massive office once again, the city lights casting cold reflections across the glass walls. She hadn't answered his texts. He deserved that. He had risen from the chair, claimed his crown, silenced June, and taken back everything that was his. But the one thing he wanted most was walking away from him. 3 days later, Miracle didn't come to work. Rumors spread. She resigned. She took a leave. No one knows. Moon couldn't focus. Meetings passed in a blur. Coffee tasted like regret. He called her again that night. Voicemail. Again. Again. At midnight, he drove to her small apartment. He knocked. Waited. And finally, the door creaked open. Miracle stood there in sweatpants, no makeup, curls and a bun. She looked exhausted. She looked real. You lied to me, she said. I know. You let me love a version of you that didn't exist. He nodded. But I loved you back. As myself. Every moment of it was real. She stared at him, tears in her eyes. And now? He stepped forward. Now, I want to build something that's true. No masks. No tests. No chairs. Just us. Silence. Then, she reached for his face, held it gently, and kissed him. Not with fire, but with forgiveness. I'm still mad at you, she whispered. I'll wait until you're not. Don't wait too long. I won't, he promised. You're all I want now. Not the throne. Not the name. Just you. The storm didn't wait. Within 48 hours of Moon's public boardroom reveal, standing, walking, leading, the media exploded. Disabled CEO walks into boardroom. Deception or strategic genius? Moon Hwan faked injury for years? African temp worker at center of scandal? Insider claims romance with foreigner was a PR move. Miracle's photo, stolen from her employee ID, flashed across screens in convenience stores, bus stops, and gossip forums. The internet was merciless. She seduced him for power. Is she even legally in Korea? Foreign women always looking for sugar daddies. Trashy. Shameless. She didn't cry. But she did stop leaving her apartment. Moon's jaw clenched as he stood before the crisis team. A dozen clean-cut consultants in dark suits flipped through media plans and brand damage forecasts. We can control the fallout if we frame the relationship as over, one offered coldly. A quiet statement. Distance yourself. Apologize for misleading the public. No. Moon said flatly. Sir. I said no. He rose from his chair. This isn't just about my reputation. This is about a woman's dignity. Her career. Her life. He didn't wait for their rebuttals. He was already walking out. That night, Moon found her in her apartment again. Miracle stood barefoot, staring out the window. Her phone buzzed endlessly on the table, screen flashing with calls and messages she wouldn't answer. I didn't want this, she said without turning. Not fame. Not headlines. Not pity. I just wanted peace. I know, he said gently. And I stole that from you. She finally turned to face him, eyes raw. They're calling me names. Tearing me apart online. Even strangers I pass on the street. I can stop it.
How?
He held her gaze. By standing beside you. In front of you. Everywhere they try to hit, I'll shield. What if that's not enough? He moved closer. Then I'll burn the world until they learn your name with reverence, not ridicule. Her lips trembled. You'd give it all up? I already have. The board tried to silence me this morning. I told them I was stepping down. Her eyes widened. What? I've made enough. I've let enough. Let June run the numbers. I want to live. Really live. With you. You'd give up everything for me? I'd give it up because I want to. Because you reminded me of what mattered. Not image. Not empire. But heart. Tears slid down Miracle's face. She stepped forward and pressed her forehead to his. I don't want you to give up everything. I just want to stop being the reason you're hurt. You're not my weakness, Moon whispered. You're the only reason I feel strong again. And then, their lips met again. A kiss no longer stolen and hiding, no longer cautious, but bold.
Public. Certain.
How 2 weeks passed they couldn't explain. Moon and Miracle stood on a stage together, hand in hand, before reporters. I was never disabled for pity, Moon said. I stepped back to see the truth. And in that truth, I found someone worth far more than legacy. He turned to Miracle. She didn't seduce me. She didn't climb the ladder. She walked beside me when no one else stared. Miracle took a breath, then faced the cameras. I am not a fantasy. I am not a scandal. I am a human being, and I have nothing to be ashamed of. The silence that followed was one of awe, not anger, for once. And it was enough. 6 months later, they moved into a countryside villa outside Seoul. Peaceful. Private. A place untouched by scandal or boardrooms. Moon started a foundation for disabled youth. Miracle opened her own design firm, focused on helping underrepresented talents, immigrants, women, dreamers. Sometimes, they still went up to rooftops, even when they didn't need to, just to remember how far they had come. On a spring morning, beneath cherry blossoms blooming wide and shameless, Moon knelt in front of her. The ring was simple. No diamonds. Just a slim silver band etched with a quote in Yoruba. True love never fades. She blinked at him, stunned. Where did you? I've been studying. I want to know your soul's language too. Miracle nodded, biting back tears.
Yes.
1,000 times yes. And as the wind danced around them, the crown that Moon once wore, the weight of names and thrones, fell away completely. Because in the end, all that remained was love.
And it was enough.